Hello and welcome to Insert Buzzword Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremy.
And I'm Tristan. Insert Buzzword, the podcast that breaks through the business buzzwords to explore the genuine stories behind entrepreneurial journeys.
In the heart of Scotland, we venture into the lives of entrepreneurs and business professionals, uncovering the unique challenges and triumphs that define their paths.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insert Buzzword Podcast. Delighted to be joined by my fellow co-host Tristan and our guest this evening, Kessar Salimi. Kessar, pleasure to have you on with us this evening. By way of a get started, do you want to give us a quick intro into who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy and Tristan, for having me on today. So my name's Kessar Salimi. I'm a mortgage broker and property investor. Been investing in property since 2010 and been a mortgage advisor since 2017.
Wow, okay. Tristan always had great people on the podcast already. I'm like, mind racing, loads of questions. Maybe the first one to get us going was like, how did you end up where you are now? And feel free to go as far back as you wish.
Yeah, sure. I think this will be relevant for you guys. So although I said that I started investing in property back in 2010, prior to that, as a family, we used to be property investors as well. So I actually started, so 2003, 2004 sort of time. And during kind of that financial boom, going up to the financial crash, we was investing in property, and we also had a family business as well. Actually lost it all as part of the crash, where we was far too over leveraged. And the banks kind of basically called the loans in. We wasn't able to refinance and go elsewhere, and basically lost everything. We almost lost our own house. So interesting time, but also a lot of lessons learned. And that's why, I started investing myself back in 2010 with my wife. And, I've learned from all the mistakes that I've made through that time, but always been involved in hospitality in the past. So family had kind of takeaways, restaurants, and I'd always worked with them all the way up till 2014. And because I started investing myself back in 2010 and then had a few properties by the time 2014 came, and that's when my dad sold the business. I continued to stay on for a couple of more years, but then wanted to have more of a kind of daytime job, as it were, because I was always working evenings and weekends and holidays, and had a young family by then as well. So went to a property meetup. I met a mortgage advisor, and he kind of asked me, would you like to come on board? And, I was kind of looking for an exit plan anyway. So I decided to retrain. And because it's my passion investing in property, my business is called Freedom Financial, because I want it to create financial freedom for myself. And that's what a lot of my clients are looking for too. So I thought I would niche more on the property investment side of things. A lot of the mortgage advisors that I came across were older anyway and kind of retiring. So I thought I'd be a bit newer to the market, offer kind of more sort of investment advice. And yeah, fast forward kind of, up to sort of now, and been advising and got a team of 7 and, continuing to grow as a property investor as myself as well.
Aye. So losing everything during the crunch with family involved, I can imagine that would have been both painful and stressful.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, most of the stress was on my dad, because it was all his assets. So, as much as it was painful for me, he was the one that went through the most pain. At the time, probably what I felt, was most upsetting for me was because I dedicated so many years of my life kind of towards that family business, all my kind of early 20s, or into teenage years, just kind of putting my head down, working away to sort of a bigger goal and almost feeling like we'd lost that. So, after this had happened, I was probably kind of in grief for a couple of years, just kind of moping about. But then I kind of listened to something that said that, it's ultimately kind of, no matter what decision you make, it's kind of down to yourself, really, so no matter what, I kind of got myself into that situation, kind of going into that family business. So I've just got to kind of own up to that. And ultimately, although we lost kind of a lot of stuff, we wasn't homeless or anything. So it's really just a first world problem. And things could be a lot worse than it was. It was meant to kind of pick ourselves back up and just go ahead and again, and actually just learn from our mistakes. And I actually think that's made me a better advisor going forward, because a lot of my clients have never been through, a financial crash like we had back in 2008. So I've learned from those mistakes myself and tried to mitigate as much as possible for myself and also for my clients.
Wow. Is the market as hard and as tough as the newspapers and the papers make out at the moment?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously they're trying to off-put sort of a lot of people getting into the market, with increased regulations, tax and stuff like that. But that also creates opportunities. In the past, you could maybe have a couple of properties just in the background, but the government's trying to do away with that and trying to make it more sort of business oriented, where you have to kind of operate as a business. So most clients now are running it through a limited company because of the tax changes and stuff like that. But if you're able to kind of stick it out, there's actually a lot of opportunities at the market. The housing demand's not going away anytime soon. We've just got an issue with they're not building enough properties, and because of these increased regulations, some of the landlords have sold up and exited the market. So the actual amount of tenant properties that are available for rent has reduced as well, which is increasing the prices of the rent. So if you can stick it out, it's definitely worthwhile doing. And I often find that it's worth kind of ignoring a lot of the news and do the opposite to what everybody says. It's kind of Warren Buffett saying, isn't it? Be fearful when others are greedy and vice versa. So when there's a lot of negative news, maybe then you should look at something. When everybody's talking about something, then maybe you should stay away. It's possibly too late.
Awesome. Kristen?
How can Jeremy and I achieve financial freedom?
Well, I mean, you've maybe seen online, there's a lot of people out there advocating get into properties, a get rich quick scheme and stuff like that. And there is ways of, making money through property. I don't deny that, I've done it myself and a lot of clients have as well. But personally, what I would say is either through your own job or business, making the income there and then storing it into assets like not just property, anything that's going to grow your wealth ultimately more than inflation. So, a lot of people will want to get into property, give up the day job straight away. For most people, that's unrealistic because most properties, although they'll make you money, it's a long-term strategy. So personally, I think, try to make your money in a business and then funnel that into property as a store of wealth.
Okay. Noted. Plans will happen. What in your early upbringing, and you mentioned family business. What was that like working with family? Is it a kind of stereotype that you'd think, or what were the pros and cons?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives to it. So I come from like a Pakistani background. My parents came here when they were very young, so pretty much been brought up here, but they still kind of had that immigrant mentality when it came to kind of work ethics and stuff. And we had the family business initially, so Indian restaurants. Then we moved into a fish and chip restaurant, and that was the last business that we had. A lot of the benefits is kind of helping each other out, being there when and sort of a time off and stuff like that. Trust, and kind of pooling your money together and using that to great good. Obviously it didn't work out too well for us at the time, but we did kind of benefit from a lot of things as well. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to working with your family, but I think kind of the most difficult thing is obviously everybody's got different ideas on what they want to do with the business. But having a kind of key leader, which my dad was in our business, he was the one leading it, and then we was all kind of playing to our own strengths, me, my brothers, my mum had worked in the business from time to time as well. So yeah, it was good.
Mm-hmm. Would you do it again with wider family? I know I guess you're starting your own family business now, but would you go back into a kind of wider family business again?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I've got quite a big family anyway. I think there's still some advantages of pulling those resources together. And then, my own children are growing up now as well. My oldest is going to be 14 this year, and she's kind of looking at accountancy and other things. And they are interested in property investment. All the children, I do talk to them about money. I do think that's, for me personally, I like that when I was growing up, that my dad was quite open about business and money. I think often, we kind of hide away from that. We don't like to kind of discuss these things. So I do want to educate my children as much as possible. So they might not necessarily come into my business, but as long as they're financially aware, and if the opportunity arises that there is some sort of, business that we can do together, I definitely wouldn't say no.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Was there a particular influence? You mentioned your dad a couple of times already, but anyone, inspirations or early influences when you were growing up?
Yeah, my granddad actually was entrepreneurial as well. So he had businesses, although I was really young at the time, and that probably rubbed off on my dad. And, he'd kind of done lots of different things. He'd even like being a self-employed taxi driver for many years down in England, and then he moved up to Scotland, and then he had friends up here, and he managed to kind of get into the hospitality trade and work his way up to eventually owning his own business. So, and yeah, I would say probably mainly kind of looking at him. And I think ultimately, even just for myself personally, I never really wanted to just only have a job. I always had aspirations of having a business, and, and I wanted, just being truthful as well, I wanted to be wealthy, and I thought, the best way to do that was potentially sort of having my own business. So I definitely had aspirations of opening my own business at some point in the future.
Yeah. When it comes to wealth, do you have a specific target, or just grow? Or what's your perspective on the wealth aspect?
Yeah, I do try to think big. So I read a book many years ago, 10X by Grant Cardone, and that kind of really opened my eyes to that, because I think if you kind of aim your goals too small, you probably kind of achieve those. So I always try to have really big goals, and then you might not achieve those, but even if you get to 50% of that, it's going to be much better than, having that, initial goal and then, potentially achieving it much quicker. So yeah, I always try to kind of think, really big, and then, but constantly keep reviewing that as well over time, because your goals do change. At one time I had an idea that I wanted to have X amount of properties, but then kind of over time things have changed as well. And, then I've now got kind of other business goals. So it's constantly evolving.
I saw Grant Cardone speak was at the SCCC, and I did leave highly enthused and motivated. Yeah, a bit more reading online after the event, like the Scientology, I found a tough pill to swallow with Grant. And yeah, I did get by in the 10X mantra. So I'm keen to understand a bit about your portfolio. Like, is it mostly residential, mostly commercial, bit of both, bit of a mixture?
Yeah, sure. So it's all residential at the moment. Predominantly buy-to-lets. I used to have a holiday let, but I converted that back to buy-to-let as well. In the future, I do plan to go more into commercial as well, just to kind of diversify, really. But mainly sort of buy-to-let investment is what I've always done. I kind of started off back in 2010, just buying, saving up, buying one a year. And then it kind of snowballed from there, where you've got your rental profits coming in, your properties are increasing in value, and then you can tap into that to then expand and buy more. And now kind of my latest strategy for sort of residential buy-to-lets has been buying 6 in one go, because there's a second home tax now that we have to pay, which is 6% of the property value. And to mitigate that, if you buy 6 properties, in one transaction, you don't have to pay that. You still have to pay a stamp duty like LBTT, but it's much lower than 6% of the whole value. So there's some huge savings involved in that. And then just commercial property as well, potentially, for my own business, operating out of that. And otherwise, commercial property, sometimes, when we think commercial, we mainly can think of retail units and that, I'm probably not too interested in that. More kind of warehouses and stuff like that, because I think there's huge demand for that just now.
Definitely. I can, from the opposite side, as a tenant, that was very hard to find a unit.
Yeah, imagine.
For our size, and the costs are eye-watering. Like, how much a month? It's more than my mortgage on my house for like 10 by 10 years. Tiny. Yeah, interesting. So I guess I'm fascinated by the whole sort of like commercial property thing. I studied architecture at university, and some of my very close friends who went to do like the property course at Cali. So like Victor, he would always sit me down and draw me out the calculations and like working out the yields and whatnot. But he would take it away. He'd be like, I'll explain it to you, but I'm not going to leave it with you. If you want me to show you, you need to invest. So yeah, keen to understand like a bit about like Victor, he talks about like family trusts. So like and I don't know if you're able to give financial advice over a podcast, but like where do the trusts come into this? So like ways of like minimizing tax.
Yeah, so I don't advise on trusts, but yeah, there's definitely benefits of that, from an inheritance tax point of view, mainly, that's why they might want to put in a trust. But that's usually kind of later down the line, once you've got your assets and accumulate them, then you might look to put them in a trust at that point. But yeah, there's definitely some advantages of that. Even pensions as well, especially for commercial property, you can hold commercial in a pension, but you can't hold residential properties in a pension pot.
Got it. So like I said, like taking your business, so you've ventured out by yourself, sort of post crash, post crunch. How have you found the experience of growing the team to 7 strong at this point, bringing people in into the business, and I guess trusting people to help you build that vision together?
Yeah, so when I sort of initially started mortgage advising, it was really difficult learning how to do sales, really, because I'd been involved in hospitality in the past, and you can pretty much open your doors to anywhere, and people will come in, and then if you serve them good food, they'll continue to return. But going out from day one as a mortgage advisor, I thought I'd just tell my friends and family, and everybody will flock to me. But that definitely wasn't the case. So the first couple of years was a real struggle, definitely a slog. Many times I felt like giving up, but just just continued on with it. And I think marketing is the key thing to get started. You might be good at your job, but if people don't know who you are, you're just not going to be busy. And then I would say probably I really capitalized during COVID time. So that's when I initially kind of started out under someone else, and then as a mortgage advisor, and then set up my own business back in March 2020. And that seemed like the worst decision ever, when we was going through lockdown, potentially the world was going to end, but actually it was a blessing. And, ultimately be kind of preparing for this time anyway, after that last sort of financial crash. So I thought, how could I have capitalized on that, rather than kind of, obviously losing what we did. So I was kind of waiting for this kind of moment to happen again. So I couldn't quite see initially, but then afterwards, when, it was going through lockdown, I thought this is the time actually to, double down, do more marketing and grow the business when everybody else is furloughed, kind of sitting at home, consuming content online. I do a lot of content marketing. We already had a business. Well, we already had 2 staff members at that point. The first staff member I took on, she had mortgage experience actually. Well, she wasn't actually my first member I took on. I took on a few people and they didn't work out. But then once I'd taken her on, and because she had experience of working in a really busy mortgage environment, my business just grew because I wasn't having to just do everything. I was able to go out and see the clients, and then she was helping kind of service that, doing all the administration. And then we was then just adding to the team, and they was then being trained up on the administration as well. And it was able to just grow from there because there's a lot of paperwork involved in our job. So predominantly I would do the sales, the advising, and then I'd have kind of administrators to then help with that, with all the processing. And then, once we got even busier, then I took on somebody to do the marketing as well. So I have somebody now that helps do all my content. So the content's my own, but they help me put it out online, through the images and the postings, editing my videos and stuff like that. Because as you guys know, you're doing a podcast, it's quite time consuming. So look, I'm able to kind of outsource that to my other colleague now. But yeah, it's been challenging taking on staff, but at the same time, I feel, as a business, if you want it to be a proper business, not kind of like a profitable job, then you do need to have staff, and because otherwise, you can't take any time off. So, they've definitely helped me in my business and definitely helped me to grow my profitability.
Did you know what kind of skill set you wanted to hire in the business, or was it just a point where you just needed help to take kind of activities off your plate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I had a kind of a job description of someone that I was looking for, but I wasn't sure if they were actually out there. So, I did advertise, and I did get a few people, and they weren't great. I started off, at the really young end of the scale. Nothing against young people, but the person I took on just wasn't experienced at all and wasn't really interested in the job, so that didn't really work out. And then I took on somebody else who had more experience, but more in kind of retail, and that again didn't work out. And then it just so happens that this other person who had experience saw the job that I had advertised and had recently just left their other role, just called me, and then, we kind of basically took her on, and the business just changed from there. But it's there is people out there that can do specific sort of mortgage power planning, as it were, mortgage administration. And I was lucky to kind of find that person, and then from there, was able to then train on the next people to kind of follow that protocol, really.
Yeah. Cool. Do you find marketing and doing videos, and I've seen some of the stuff on LinkedIn where you're I guess talking to the camera, so to speak. Are you natural at that? Is that something you had to develop? How did that marketing journey kind of turn out for you?
Yeah, I found it very difficult, to be honest. I remember when I first started, I went to like one of these like BNI events. I'm interested, we met you at a business event once, so it's been really nerve-wracking. And sometimes like they'd go around the room and ask everybody what they did. I would be really nervous. Actually, once kind of run out of the room, as I could see my turn coming up. So, naturally quite a shy person. But what I realized that I wasn't going to get anywhere in business if I couldn't tell anybody what I did. So I had to kind of push myself out of my comfort zone. So doing all these things like podcasts, videos, blogs, putting myself out there online was very uncomfortable. And at times can still be uncomfortable. I've got more used to it now because I do so much. But it definitely wasn't easy, and it doesn't come natural to me either. But it was kind of sink or swim. I had a young family, and I really needed to make this work as a business. So it was like the kind of, do or die, really.
Did you have resources within the business to support that marketing activity? Or was it something like, I'm thinking more like, did you have someone initially editing the videos for you, or supporting with, paid advertisements, or I don't know, scheduling stuff for you in administrative capacity? Or was it just you doing it all yourself initially?
Yeah, it was just me doing it all myself. I mean, to be fair, I've got to give a lot of credit to my previous boss, because when I started off as a mortgage advisor, he's the one that took me on under his wing, trained me up, and he's the one that got me into advertising initially anyway, to market myself. So, a lot of credit goes to him. But as far as sort of posting, it was all myself initially. And once I felt so overwhelmed, it was actually one of my colleagues that initially I met at a property meetup. And it was the one that I run myself. He came along, had an interest in property, and, just wanted to change a career. So he joined us, but he had, a bit of a sort of, where he kind of took sort of marketing as a bit of a hobby for himself personally as well. So he kind of took that on as a role. And then we started kind of doing that podcast, and, we started doing graphic design, just quite basic, through Canva and stuff like that. And then when he left the business, then I thought it's actually now time to advertise for, somebody to do our marketing full time. And there is a lot of people that are very experienced out there that can do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What advice would you give someone starting out on their marketing journey if they're trying to promote their business? What would be the one or two things you should focus on?
Yeah, sure. I think don't overthink it, really. Sometimes we want to perfect everything before we put it out. Just put it out there. I don't think you should be too worried about posting too much content either. So I try to post daily. Some people might think that's too much, but if you don't post enough, people will forget about you. So, post often, and don't worry about, you can kind of fine tune things as you go along. You'll understand over time, what things work, what things don't, and you can kind of polish up your sort of your editing and your blogs and that as you get more experience. Sometimes people will wait until everything's perfect before they actually post something, and they'll also often get disheartened if they don't get any leads off the back of a couple of posts. So I've been marketing myself since 2017, and things only really started to snowball after sort of around 2020. So it definitely takes a lot of time. It's not an overnight thing, or wasn't for me personally.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Yeah. I think that's something that I would naturally, I know I do, like just overthink things, or you just want something really good because you want it to do well because you're so invested in it. But the reality is, one, just the logic of the more you do something, the better you get at it. So just put it out there. Like you said, it's not the difficulty is you do want that quick fix, that overnight thing that's going to solve, a problem, or, bring a result that you want. But the reality is that it's not quite linear like that, or directly related. So.
No. And sometimes people work through that kind of feast of famine as well, because they'll do a bit of marketing and then eventually they'll get busy and then stop marketing again. So you've got to have consistency.
Yeah.
What's your biggest channel for social content?
For me personally, I'll say Facebook. That works best for me. Maybe because property investors kind of gravitate towards that. Maybe the demographic of investors as well. There's Facebook groups. Maybe too, because I've been on there the longest. I do stuff on Instagram as well and LinkedIn. So they both, all three kind of work well in their own way. I'm looking to branch out onto TikTok as well now. I've been on other people's podcasts and videos and stuff in the past through TikTok, and people actually reached out to me through that. And I think in the past people have thought that's more of a younger channel, but actually there's kind of people of all age groups watching these different mediums. I do a bit on YouTube as well. I've done a podcast myself in the past, which I've not been doing recently. So I think for me, what I find is like, even speaking to my clients and finding out where, they initially kind of, or why they reached out to me or where they saw me on, it's often kind of through multiple different mediums. So they maybe see me talk at an event. They might have saw me on someone else's podcast, maybe even met me face to face, maybe even been stalking me for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then eventually when the time's right, then they'll reach out to me. So, they've maybe kind of come across me through kind of 7 or 8 different touch points by the time they actually decide to use me.
And I got similar advice recently about that same thing, just almost about familiarity and after, however many touch points, 3 or 4, 7 or 8, whatever it is, that people will then be like, oh, that's the guy that does this, or I've seen him from that. And then just, they almost, there's almost like feel like they know you before they've met you kind of thing, which is must be part of that connection.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. For your business, like what is an ideal customer? Who's the ideal customer for you?
Yeah, I would probably say somebody who, maybe has a business already that's doing quite well, and they want to invest those profits into property. There's kind of ways that you can do that efficiently through sort of, let's say they've got a limited company that the trading business is running as, and that's making a profit, and they then want to use that to buy property. They can loan it from that to another limited company that they set up for property investment, and then they just keep kind of funneling away at that, really. I would say that's probably my ideal client. And then they're often kind of return customers who kind of keep, buying properties. We get to know them, they get to know us. And then it basically kind of comes to a point where, I've got an offer accepted on this property now. Can you sort it out for us? And then, we already know exactly what they're looking for, and, can just kind of, do what they basically ask us to do. So yeah, I would say that's really my ideal clients, business owners.
Yeah. So it's not like you're a young professional looking to buy a second home. You're looking for, business owners with profits to invest.
Yeah. I mean, we get people from all walks of life. We're dealing with first-time buyers as well. We've got people who are full-time landlords, people with bad credit history. We deal with everybody. And there's challenges for every single client. No one's like a vanilla client anymore. Everybody's got kind of their own circumstances. But luckily, there's so many different lenders out there. It's pretty much a lender for everybody nowadays.
Okay. Awesome. And like, which geographies or territories do you see like as big sort of like opportunities where the up and coming areas you reckon that we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah. Well, if we're focusing on Scotland, I would say Aberdeen's been an interesting place. A lot of property investors have been looking at Aberdeen because after kind of the oil price dipped there, the prices started to drop. I mean, it didn't really drop in 2008. The prices, they continued to rise. And so their kind of boom went on for far longer than the rest of the UK. But then eventually when the prices dropped, and they've kind of been stagnant now for the last few years. And, a lot of property investors believe that we're at the bottom point, and, potentially prices from there will maybe start to rise, ever so slowly. The market there is still quite flat, and there's a lot of properties for sale there, but people are able to buy properties at a significant discount. Imagery, you're in Glasgow, that area is really buoyant just now. So trying to get discounted property there is almost impossible. But in Aberdeen, it's not uncommon to get sort of 20-30% off the home report value. So, and then some clients are buying the properties at a significant discount, adding value to it by refurbishing the property, and then getting a refinance at its new end value, and then basically refinancing and taking the money back out. Because that's often, I know I was kind of saying that, a lot of people will use their profits to invest in property, but if you can be clever with it and you're adding value to the property, then you can use the equity that you've created to then refinance and go again. Because people maybe just have like one pot of money and they'll want to kind of recycle that the best they can. And using the BRR strategy, which is buy, refurbish, refinance, then forcing the value into the property and able to extract that and then use that again to buy your next one.
And like, what do you think? It's like, I don't know if it's because like time has passed and inflation means that things get more expensive, but friends that have bought, say, flats in the south side of Glasgow, where I'm like 10 years ago as a student, I spent like, I don't know, $550 a month on rent on a 2-bed tenement, and it was nice.
Yeah.
You'd struggle to rent something for less than twice the price of that now. Like, how come? Because like when I'm talking to people, I'm like, what are you spending on your rent where I was staying? It seems crazy.
Yeah, I mean, generally, rents have increased in line with inflation over time, up until the last few years, I would say. And so, even my own properties, they would kind of, every time a tenant would leave after 2-3 years, we maybe bump it up by £25, £50 here and there. I'd never ever seen, in all the time that I've been investing, rental prices increasing as significantly as they have been. For me personally, and a lot of property investors would believe it's due to the meddling from the government. So, the S&P and the Greens are very kind of anti-landlord, unfortunately. So they've brought in a lot of regulation, which has forced a lot of landlords to exit the market. All the increased taxation as well that's now involved. So there's less properties available, and then due to supply and demand, that's driving the price of rents up. And also, we've got, it's recently kind of changed, but there's a rent cap for a long period of time where you wasn't able to increase the rents by more than 3%. So what that was doing, it was forcing people, when they were then renting out the properties again, when it became vacant, to then charge as much as possible, what the market would allow. And therefore, that was driving the price of rents up as well. We've also had, especially in kind of areas like Glasgow, Dundee, Edinburgh, and Aberdeen as well, a lot more foreign students coming, post-COVID. So a lot of people maybe before would only look in the city centres to rent properties out. They've been kind of driven further, further afield to be able to get rental properties. And again, that's pushing the price. And then obviously we've got the mortgage rates going up as well. And, like you mentioned, inflation itself. So it'd be like a perfect cocktail of everything. And you're right, the rental prices now are eye-watering. I always try to charge a kind of fair rent or, slightly below the market rent. So hopefully that my tenant will stay long-term. But you're almost being forced to charge the rent, due to these regulations. And you don't know what they're then going to change the regulations by in the future, because there is a proposed bill at the moment about these rent caps again, not just capping it for existing tenants, but also in between tenancies. So like an example, you said, if somebody was on $550 rent and they've never increased their rent, they might not ever be able to get to the market rent, because if they're only able to increase it by, say, 5% a year, they'll always be behind. And then, that property will almost become worth, or it'll be worth a lot less than other properties in the area, because the yields won't be as good.
So, my opinion is like responsible landlords have probably got it quite tough. Like, I don't think it's an easy thing to do. Like, what's your, like, because again, the media, right? We're not going to pay too much attention to what they're saying, but they make it out like landlords are somewhat exploitative. But with friends that I know that sort of do this type of thing, like invest buy to lets and like the stress and the hassle of having rental properties, I don't think they're the big bad wolves that the papers make out. What was your take on that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'm a landlord myself, but it's easy to bash landlords, isn't it? Especially from a politics point of view, there's many more tenants than there is landlords, so they'd rather appease the tenants. So, but I do personally believe that they do need us, and they do need landlords. We definitely need first-time buyers as well, and house movers. I definitely wouldn't deny that, but there's a space for rental properties. I often believe that for most clients, if they're going to live in a property less than 5 years, you're probably better to rent than you are to buy, when you factor in all the cost of buying and selling and, everything else involved. So, and people are more transient now as well. They'll come to an area, stay there for a couple of years, and then move away. People want that flexibility. So the kind of increased need for rental properties isn't going away anytime soon. So, they do need us, and it's really unfortunate that they're trying to drive us out of the market. What I'm worried about is that who's going to fill that gap will be these kind of big pension companies that are doing a build to rent. They're kind of forcing out us small businesses, really small landlords, and they're kind of wanting these kind of purpose-built buildings that are kind of being financed by pension companies. because there's different rules for those guys than there is for us as private landlords. Same for social housing. So, like you've got your housing associations and even councils. So like there were some of the rules, like some of these rent caps didn't apply to them whilst it did for private landlords, which I think is unfair as well. If there's going to be rules for renting, then it should be for everybody, really. There's not an even playing field here, unfortunately.
And like, what would you say the biggest challenge facing private landlords is in the next, I don't know, 1 to 3 years? Like, what's the thing that keeps you up at night at the moment?
Yeah, I would probably say regulation, really. So, like I said already, the government, I would say probably more from the Greens' point of view, they are very anti-landlord. So if they continue to stay in power, they have proposed some bills that could really be disastrous for us as property investors. The rent caps continue to carry on because it was like brought through emergency legislation that were allowed to do this, as part of COVID, and then they kind of kept extending that. That's now finished, but they want to kind of propose this as an actual bill in Parliament, and then you won't be able to increase rents in between tenancies. So if that happens, and let's say a landlord has a mortgage payment that's gone up, and it might not be profitable for them anymore, they're just going to have to sell up and unfortunately then evict the tenant as well. So it's making it worse all around. And they want to give powers to councils for rent pressure zones. And we saw the studies that they've done for like other areas, like European cities where they've had rent pressure zones in the past. It's not worked. It's either kind of driven landlords out of the market or actually had the opposite effect and increased rents. As we've already seen with these rent caps, as you mentioned, rents have kind of almost doubled. And this was during a time when we actually had rent caps where the government were promising that they were going to be protecting tenants by only allowing rents to increase by 3% per year.
Yeah, terrifying. That'd keep me up at night too. Kirsten?
If a kind of first time or relatively new property investors coming to you, what is the kind of market that's up and coming or you think would add a lot of value? Is it Dundee still growing? Should they be investing in, I don't know, Stirling, Aberdeen, Inverness?
Yeah, I think all the cities in Scotland are great investment areas, and they've all got their benefits and merits. So for most clients, they'll probably invest close to themselves initially. So, either the city that they're living in or somewhere close by. You mainly want to be looking at fundamentals. So is there such good transport links, opportunities for jobs, maybe universities, that sort of stuff. Is going to be demand for rental properties in that area. And for most clients, we find that there's an area local to them where all the boxes are ticked, so they'll generally kind of invest there first. And even in that area, there'll be kind of good and bad areas to invest. So, maybe through local knowledge, speaking to letting agents, estate agents, myself, we'll all kind of keep our clients on the right track on kind of buying the right investment properties. But yeah, maybe kind of certain sort of opportunities available in Aberdeen, as I mentioned before. But apart from that, areas like I said, like Dundee, it's often kind of overlooked over the bigger cities, but there's been a lot of regeneration happening here. We had the V&A recently, Eden projects coming in the future as well. So there's a lot of regeneration happening here, and prices are still fairly low, I would say, compared to some other cities. The yields are also very good. But other areas as well, we're doing really well. Stirling, even Glasgow. So like, although the market's been really buoyant in Glasgow, I would say Glasgow's still fairly cheap compared to Edinburgh. And that's why I feel personally why the market there is still booming, because Edinburgh's always been the most expensive city, and some areas of Glasgow have, almost been, seen as good value, and it's like as if they're kind of catching up now. But some of my Glasgow investors are now looking further afield as well to sort of Paisley. There's good transport links, there, the university and stuff, or even out to Ayrshire as well. So there's lots of good areas in Scotland to invest.
What about someone starting out in your kind of field or looking to develop a similar business? What advice would you have for them starting out?
Yeah, so I mean, always having a passion for property itself, I think, is really key. It doesn't have to be property investment. It could just be property in general. If you're going to be a mortgage advisor for everybody, or just being involved in property, obviously, and then just kind of knowing all your products inside out. So if it is mortgages, knowing all the different products that are out there, because there is so many. And just kind of doing your sort of CPD, really, continuous professional development, and then marketing yourself, really, just making sure that you are getting yourself known out there, whether that be through face-to-face advertising or digital, because there's lots of different avenues out there, and some people are more comfortable with certain types over others. So it's just whatever works best for you, and it, continually keep doing it. It's got to be consistent.
Is there any key sources or resources that you use to keep up to date or knowledgeable that you'd recommend listeners to go check out?
Yeah, so I'm very much into personal development, so I do listen to Audible quite a lot. I'm always listening to a book pretty much all the time. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I stick a pair of headphones on, and as I'm doing my chores or exercising and stuff like that, I'll always listen to something. But when it comes to sort of property, there's a couple of good podcasts. There's one called the Property Podcast that's been going for many years now. That's really good. It's the two Robs, and there's a local one for Scottish property investors called the Scottish Property Podcast. The two guys, Nick and Stephen, they're really good as well. In business, I know you guys are involved in business. This guy called James Sinclair, he's on YouTube, but he's also got his podcast. I really like listening to him. He's based down south somewhere. And I find, maybe I've not kind of heard that many business podcasts. I really relate to his one, because he's often coaching other business people, who are going through the kind of same issues I am, and I'll always kind of pick up things from that, because we often get overwhelmed with our job, and he kind of basically picks it apart and tells the person, where they're going wrong, and I can often feed that back into my own business as well.
What is the one task you hate doing in your business?
Yeah, I'd probably say administration, really, because it's just, most people don't really like doing that, but there is people that do. So, I'm quite lucky that I've got my colleagues that help me do that, whether that be on the personal side, the property side, or the mortgages. I try to outsource as much as possible. I actually read a book by Rob Moore, who's quite a famous property investor. And, one of his books was about kind of outsourcing, really, and that was a game changer for me. So if I can outsource it, I do, and I think that is what makes you a better property investor as well, because it is quite admin heavy. There's a lot of paperwork involved, unfortunately, applying for mortgages, working through the conveyancing process with solicitors and everything else, even doing all the lettings and what have you. So if you can be systematized, then great, and if you can't yourself, then you should maybe employ somebody. You can get virtual assistants now, if you don't have the facility to actually take on an employee, you can maybe just take them on an ad hoc basis, or a couple hours a week, what have you.
And what are the key sort of skills and attributes that you have that you reckon make you good at what you do? What makes you unique?
I think sort of a huge passion in sort of actual property investment. A lot of people that are in my field don't actually invest in property. So, I feel like I've got the edge because I'm actually, doing the exact same thing as what my clients are doing. I believe in 100%, the products that I'm offering to my clients are the exact same products that I'm using myself personally. So I can relate with my clients and exactly, the issues that they're having. When I'm trying to advise them on a specific product to take out, I've already taken it out myself. I'm already using it myself. I know it's worked for myself before I'm actually recommending it to my clients. So, and I try to do that across the board, really use all my services, my own services that I'm offering before, offering it to my clients.
What's the kind of plans, or what's the next steps for Freedom Financial?
Yeah, I think plans to expand, really. So a couple of my colleagues are going through their mortgage advising course. So at the moment, I do the majority of the advising. So there is a bit of a bottleneck because I'm kind of trying to do the sales as well, marketing, and then actual kind of advising. So I want to kind of pass some of the advising on to my colleagues who are already super knowledgeable. They just don't have the qualification. So I think the plan then would be in the future to focus more on sales, business development, working alongside my colleague on the marketing. And then I could then pass my clients onto my other colleagues who can then do the advising, and then they'll then have their other colleagues that'll help service the clients through all the admin work and the processing. So, having a kind of nice sort of chain going, where it kind of starts with myself and then, and works its way through. So it's getting there already, but I think, we potentially need to take on a couple of more members of the staff as well in the future to help the business to grow, but definitely want to continue to expand.
Yeah. And you mentioned your 14-year-old daughter earlier. If she came to you asking for a role or some work experience, what's the first job she's getting?
Yeah, well, she started right at the bottom. I think that's the best way to get anybody started. That's the way I started myself. Like when I started with my dad, I kind of started washing dishes first, and then started heating up rice and, just doing basic jobs. So I would just get her writing, at the beginning, just kind of helping on sort of administration tasks and stuff like that. And then if she liked the job and, she was competent, then we could work her up from there.
Good. Well, how far does your experience extend in terms of, I guess, geographically? Do you operate in certain areas, or are you across the whole of Scotland or the UK? Where do you operate?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my clients are in Scotland. I think that's because I'm based here as well. However, we do have clients down south as well, in England, Wales, so, all over the UK. And then we actually have a lot of expat clients as well who have maybe moved away but wanting to invest in the UK. So that's for buying properties here. So as long as the property is in the UK, I can help the client. They could be based elsewhere. So, we've got clients based abroad, and we'll just deal with them on a video call like this, and then digitally after that.
Is there any plans to diversify? Is there a particular kind of industry or area you'd like to kind of move into to develop the business that I guess may or may not be complementary?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think about it all the time. I would like to perfect the business that I've got first before I do that, because, we can often kind of look at other sort of avenues of business and think, that'd be great to incorporate that. But I want to make sure I'm doing this 100% right before I jump into anything else. But I definitely want something like you said, Tristan, to complement this business though. So that could be, say, financial advising, so not just doing the mortgages. It could be kind of, offering full sort of financial advising, or it could be, a lettings business or a estate agency, or even like an accountancy business. Something that could complement the business that we have at the moment. So yeah, my eyes are open to anything for the future. But I want to perfect this first before I explore those options.
How many more years till you get to that point, do you think?
I don't think we're too far away, actually. So hopefully once my colleagues are fully qualified, and then we maybe take on a couple more members of staff and they're fully trained, we should have a good process in place at that point. And then we can maybe look at, what's going to be the next step from there. So we're not too far away from that already.
Very cool. And to this point, what would you say is the biggest success for the business, the greatest achievement so far?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it feels like it's hard to tell, because you're always going through this roller coaster ride. Maybe listen to me here, it kind of sounds great, but I've been through so many challenges. It's up and down all the time, and you guys know yourselves what it's like. And but yeah, I think one nice thing that one of the lenders that I was working with, who had recently entered sort of the field that we're in, the buy-to-let space, and they've done some market research. I don't know how they got this data, but they found out that, me as a broker had placed the most amount of cases, in the buy-to-let sector the last year. So that was really nice. And it wasn't even information that I was aware of, actually. So yeah, I would say probably that was the biggest achievement.
Yeah, grinding hard. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, it didn't feel it at the time, because you're just doing it, and it's, when you're in a business, there's always expenses everywhere as well. So it was nice to get that achievement.
Yeah, the pressure is constant and unrelenting. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's awesome.
How do you find that balance of work life and young family?
Yeah, I think it's got better over time having employees. When I didn't have employees, I was working day and night. And I think also because I was trying to make the business work, so I was working evenings, weekends. But now, I do try to work just kind of 9 to 5. I will do some work in the early mornings, in the evenings. My brain never really shuts off, and I will work on the weekends from time to time as well. But actually, sort of office hours, I'm quite strict now. It is kind of 9 to 5. So, but having my colleagues really helps because I will delegate tasks to them. And actually, like even for clients, servicing them as well, they'll often just reach out directly to my colleagues and they'll be able to answer their questions. They're not always relying on me anymore. So it definitely helps having staff.
Yeah. Do you regret the time period or look back when you did work day and night and think, oh, I shouldn't have done it? Or do you view it as a kind of necessary part of developing the business?
Yeah, I think it was necessary for me personally. So I was working, day and night on the business, and I was actually doing deliveries evenings and weekends as well, just to kind of keep the income coming in. So I think when you're starting off in business, you've got to do, what you have to, because had I not maybe done that, then I possibly would have given up earlier. So I'm glad that I did actually, and it was giving me enough income and also from sort of the business point of view, developing that. I think my business has grown quicker than it would have done if I'd just purely worked 9 to 5 from the beginning.
Yeah, agreed. I've done the same. Delivering Domino's for 18 months, trying to make it work. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all, is there?
No, not at all. And hats off to anyone that's working hard to make their dreams come true. So how do you is your family supportive, I guess, is the question. How have you, when you were doing those long nights, those long hours, were you well supported? Were you encouraged to do it, or was there tension at home when you were doing it?
Yeah, so I think kind of like from my dad and mum and stuff, because they've been involved in business, they know what's involved. So yeah, they've been very supportive. My wife has also been, super supportive. It's been challenging for her. One of the reasons why I wanted to have more of a 9 to 5 job was because we had young children. At one point, we had 3 children under 5, and that's why I wanted to kind of move from working evenings and weekends to working in the daytime. But then it was also equally challenging when I kind of decided to make that change. I was still working all the hours as well. So no, she's been super supportive to me. So, it is important to have all your family on board with you when it comes to these things. But, my wife has been very supportive to me, to be fair.
I'd like to ask one around future trends. Like, what do you think the big trends in the next few years are going to be in your space?
Yeah, I definitely think kind of AI and, the digitalization of everything is going to be kind of, will change our space because it is quite old fashioned at the moment, applying for mortgages and, some lenders still ask for everything, in wet signature and stuff like that. So having everything online, and having a more slicker process is the way forward. That will definitely disrupt the market. There'll be a less need for certain types of people in the market that we have just now. But also there will still be a need for advice, or more so potentially, because even just now we've seen kind of the high street lenders and that, closing up. They don't really want to have employees anymore. They don't want to have the burden of providing advice. They'd rather, us as the intermediaries and brokers to do that. I don't think that will change, but I think the process will definitely get slicker, and it really needs to be honest, because some of the process, even like the legal process, and that is in the dark ages at the moment. So, we definitely need to improve all those. And I think kind of AI and everything that's going on just now will do that.
Yeah. We've got one more before I pass over to Tristan, but this is just it just shows my ignorance with the whole buying a property. Where are my title deeds? Who owns them? Where are they kept?
But you said no. Yeah. So yeah, they're yours, obviously. But usually your solicitor will keep them when you bought the property. So you maybe have to. It's a valid question, because a lot of people have a
Is it with the mortgage broker, the mortgage owner, who we bought the money from? Like, where did they end up?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, sometimes the solicitor will give you the title deeds, but often they'll hold on to them. And if you do lose them, then you do have the land registries who also kind of keep a copy as well. So, or registrars of Scotland even, they'll keep a copy as well. So, yeah, but it'll normally be solicitor that has the copy of those.
Okay, no, I'm like, who was this solicitor when we did this?
Yeah, I don't even about anymore.
No, to be fair, the household admin is clearly not my task. But yeah, curiosity. There you go. Tristan?
If is there anything that you wish you'd kind of known at the start of your career, so to speak, or careers as they may be?
Yeah, I think you're constantly learning, aren't you? For me, I had a lot of self-doubt. Is it actually going to work? So, I was always kind of worried about that, and I wish I didn't worry as much. It's obviously natural as well to worry, isn't it? But for me personally, I felt I just kind of worried all the time that, am I going to be able to make a go of this? Is it going to be successful? Am I good enough? Kind of imposter syndrome and stuff like that. So I wish for me personally, I had less of that, because I was doing all the right things, to make it happen. But, sometimes you can't see it happening at the time either. You can't see that you actually are progressing, but I probably, spent too much time worrying really. So that's why I'd probably tell myself, don't worry as much.
Yeah. We can all learn from that one.
Yeah, we can. Like what got you through those moments of doubt?
I think having a family for one, knowing that I can't let them down, that was a huge driver. But even before I had my family, just sort of consistency and determination and drive to do well. I never give up on things, so even when things do get hard, I'm not the type of person that would walk away. I'll just keep kind of going really, so I've never wanted to kind of fail at anything. Obviously you don't want to kind of flog a dead horse, but at the same time, if you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, I will, continue to pursue it. So, yeah, I don't know, just great, really, just kind of to get on with it. Definitely the family helped as, as my children, well, once I had my children, but, I had that grit prior to that as well, to be fair.
What are you doing to relax or to outside of work? What are your kind of main hobbies and interests?
Yeah, I would say I was always into kind of health and fitness in the past, but then I let that kind of slide when I started my business. My excuse was that I'm too busy. I need to focus on growing the business, and I wasn't focusing as much on my health. And then when COVID happened, and then decided, gosh, really start kind of looking after myself again. So I got into cycling. So I'm really passionate about cycling now. I didn't actually realize I lived on a cycle path, and I never used to cycle or walk anywhere. I always just jumped in the car for anything, even to go to the shops. So I do a lot of walking now, cycling. I've got a gym at home. For me personally, that works well. So, even if I'm short of time in the morning, if I've only got half an hour, even if I've got 20 minutes, I still wake up, get my exercise in the morning, and then that sets me up for the day. I'll even do other things like yoga, stretching, lots of different things. And I think that feeds into business as well, personally, because if you feel healthy, then, improves all the aspects of life as well. So, success for me isn't purely just financial, there's lots of different aspects to that. And health is definitely one of those. And also kind of what you put into your body, sort of food-wise. So always trying to eat healthy, sort of natural foods. I do kind of juicing, predominantly sort of vegetable-based diet, but I now do meat again as well. But just trying to eat a balanced diet, really. And that too has also helped me, I think, business-wise.
Scott, brilliant. With that, I'm conscious of the time, Tristan. So, name of the podcast, insert buzzwords. We like to ask each of our guests, what is a business buzzword or piece of jargon that you either love or hate from your job?
Yeah, I would probably say no money down for property. That comes up quite a lot, especially on social media. And then people have that assumption that you can get into property without needing any money. But unfortunately, you do. The no money down comes from where you're basically borrowing from other people. But that's not always possible for everybody either. So, so any kind of get rich quick scheme thing, it's often something I'm not that keen on.
Sure. And I see that property sourcing. This was one that I heard a lot about, right? Like, would you throw that in there, or is like, right, you're sort of, or is that like a legit way to make money in your industry?
Yeah, no, it's a valid question. Yeah, that's a great one as well, property sourcing. So I do use property sources myself to find me properties because I'm busy in my day-to-day job. I don't have time to trips around lots of different properties and keep offering. So I do use trusted sources to find me properties. But unfortunately, a lot of people get into sort of sourcing because they maybe don't have the funds to get into property itself, but they've maybe done a course to kind of, start a property investment and then thought property sourcing is the best way to do that initially. But often they might not have the experience in property itself, or some of the deals that they find might not actually be that great either. It's actually really tough to be a property sourcer too, although they might be, what is perceived as charging quite a high fee. Not all the deals go through, and sometimes even the fee that they're charging might not cover the amount of time that they spend on trying to find those properties. So it's difficult to be a good property sourcer, I would say.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so no money down. I like it. And with that, Tristan, do you want to close it out?
Yeah, one final question, Kesar, is how can our listeners keep in touch or follow you? They're looking to get financial freedom.
Yeah, great. So you can search me online on social media, so Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. My name's Kessar Salimi. You can follow me there. Or you can follow our business, Freedom Financial, on our website as well, which is freedomfs.co.uk. I post a lot of content out there online there, and you can sign up to our mailing list. So on one channel, you'll be able to get me. You can also reach out to me online as well through my website. You can book a call with me. We'll have a discovery chat. I can kind of discuss, how property investment can work for you in your circumstances, and we can take it from there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Learned a lot. Mind has been blown a couple of times, and it's been brilliant to get to know you a bit better, Kesar, and hear about your journey. So thank you very much. And we will be back with another episode next week and another interesting guest.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Give us a follow on social media and listen to all of our other episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Bye.